Today on The State of Us, how schools are rewriting the rules on class time for students and even ditching grade levels. How are unvaccinated students costing colleges? I'm Justin Weller, the host of The State of Us, and today I'm joined by our friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson. And we're talking about, I think, what might be one of your favorite topics, Lance, right? Something as you've professed, you've been studying for many years, and that's the idea of competency-based education.
It's one of my favorite things. It stands the system on its head and works with students to get the most out of them. Wow. Kind of what I think education is all about. But word of the day, having our own little piece of education here today, competence. C-O-M-P-E-T-E-N-C-E, 3 syllables. I love the definition. Sufficient means for a modest livelihood. Isn't that what school's supposed to do? Train you for real world so that you can earn a living and make it on your own. So why not get rid of the Carnegie unit and have competency-based testing? We're going to make you competent instead of giving you a grade card that says you got all A's or you got B's or you got C's. And what does that mean? Well, we don't know. Because it doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us the skills you have. It doesn't tell us what you know how to do and what you don't know how to do. It just says that when we made an arbitrary length of time and collected work, this is the arbitrary grade we're going to give you. So, yeah, that tells us a whole lot about you as a student. You have straight A's and you don't know how to read. You have straight A's and you don't know your math facts. Okay, awesome. That grade really meant something, didn't it? Sorry.
Or you can't read and somehow you're in junior high, right?
No, you're going to college.
Oh, yeah.
One of the largest growing population in colleges are students who are taking remedial classes. They have a high school diploma and they're taking remedial classes because they're not prepared for college. That's one of the fastest growing segments of the college world. Has been for the last 15 years. And what are we doing about it in education? Nothing. We're not trying anything new. We're going to do more of the same. Competency-based education. What a wonderful idea. That's been around for about 50, 60 years. But now some people are trying it again because of COVID. Awesome. If that's what it takes to make education better, I'm all for it, whatever it takes.
Competency-based education is a form of personalized learning that emphasizes the mastery of skills over time spent in class. So at one of the school districts that is trying this, what that means is that grade point averages no longer exist. And in 2 years, neither will grade levels. Instead, you have K through 12 students who get rated on a 4-point scale for each skill, receiving about 2 new ratings per week. In 7th grade English, that may mean the ability to hold a collaborative conversation. Those who are prepared with questions and open to other viewpoints might receive a 3. Leading the conversation and keeping it from stalling out would garner a 4. And according to the superintendent, quote, "We kept coming back to the idea that you couldn't get world class because the system itself wasn't designed for that. The system itself was designed to sort kids, to rank kids."
Yeah, it all goes back to, if you really want to go old school, think of the one-room schoolhouse. That's competency-based education. That you, the teacher, may have 10, 12, 15 students in the room ranging from the ages of 6 to 18. And you would just have class for those people who could do the skill at a certain level. And everybody would be working on their own thing at their own pace, at their own time. And then they couldn't move on until they had proven that they had accomplished that skill or task that was before them. That's very simply what it is. And then we get into the factory model school that we started in the 20th century in the United States. That is, well, we need to make students for the business world, so we're going to put them into sit at a desk for a certain amount of time and make them change just like they will at work, that they will stand at the machine and they will work for a certain amount of time and the buzzer will go off and then they'll move to this and they'll do this and we're going to train them to be good workers. Okay. I'm not saying, it did wonders for the United States, right? We began to produce all kinds of goods and become a world power and everything else. But again, that's not our world anymore. That's not our goal, is to produce people who will work in the factories. That's not what we do anymore. So why are we still using a system that was developed by education and really by major players in the work industry, by business owners? They pushed schools to create this business factory model because they needed workers. Well, now the workers that businesses need are a different type of worker. So why not make education fit the kind of workers that are necessary for today?
The workplace has changed, right? In other words, the place for America leading the world is not in the side of manufacturing anymore. It was, right? I mean, that's how we got to where we were, was basically leading this great boom into the assembly line and the ability to mass produce goods and distribute them to the world, and really bringing that to successful fruition is part of what got us to where we are today, a huge part. But what's going to keep us at the top of our game is not that. And that's becoming increasingly clear as less than a majority of Americans work in a job like that. And with more and more people who are working in information services, other things that require, right, on-the-job problem solving and creative thinking and the ability to meet different challenges and do different things week in and week out. As that develops, you have to have people that are dynamic, that understand how to meet a set of challenges, that understand how to adapt, and forcing everybody into the exact same model and teaching regimented discipline is not necessarily the thing that's going to encourage that to take place. Now, we still have to make sure that people get a set of skills, right? But the question is, what set of skills are we trying to communicate? And I think as I was listening to you talk, what makes my mind think, Lance, is it's not that we were so focused on getting people to really learn math or really learn English or really learn whatever, right? The focus was on getting you to learn the system.
Exactly.
And the way the system works and how you work the system. That's what the focus was on. Now, did it produce, good grades and good problem solving, and maybe not good problem solving, but did it produce good grades? Well, part of the way we got to where we were as a nation is it did for some time, but also, and this is where the mismatch comes in that I think we're forgetting today, the world was very different then.
Well, it produced good workers in the factory system. That's why public school was created and pushed and mandated, was that we needed workers to fulfill these factory jobs so that we could grow the economy. And it worked for what it was designed to do. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, that's not what we need now. So why are we still using that system?
And when you think about it, I mean, basically in a traditional classroom, right, students are all being taught the same material at the same speed. And even though there's students...
And being tested at the same time.
Right.
So your grade reflects how well you knew it after you got it for the same amount of time as everybody else.
Yep.
It doesn't allow you, if you learn faster or if you learn a little bit slower, based on that topic. Because I've had students who were doing one unit, and the students who learn quickly learn, the next time when we do the very next unit, they're the students who learn a little bit slower. So based on the information or the skill that you're teaching, that will flow, who the quicker learners are versus, and when I say slower learner, it means we all process information differently, right? Yet what we do in a factory model is, well, this is when it has to be produced, so everybody has to do it on this time. So we reward those people who learn it faster. That doesn't mean they learn it better. It doesn't mean they know how to implement it better. It means they learned it faster than somebody else, and that's what we've rewarded.
A key, as you were speaking, I think, is distinguishing between learning something and knowing something, right? Because those are not necessarily the same thing. Part of our system today is largely focused around, well, you've learned it and your capacity to regurgitate it exists. Do you know it? Do you understand it? That's a different question, right? I can tell you what it is, but I can't tell you why it's that way or what made it that way or how to use it, right? I can just tell you that 2 + 2 = 4. Do I know what to do with that in the real world? No. Do I know how I could use that to solve other problems? Not really, but I do know that 2 + 2 is 4,
Well, but the other part of with grades, let's say that you're in an English class and you have vocabulary tests. Well, I know vocabulary. I know how to spell, and I like to learn definitions. So I get an A on my vocabulary test. When it comes to writing my essay, I don't write very well, and I get a D on my essay. And when you combine those two grades, I get a C+.
It just tells you the average of your cumulative knowledge, which really is not all. I mean, in the grand scheme of everyday life, who really cares what the average of your total knowledge is? Because that's like, if you test Lance and I on nuclear physics, right? I mean, we're going to test awful. I mean, just absolutely abysmal. We're going to probably totally fail that class, right? But then if you test us, I don't know, in history or in modern politics and current events, we're probably going to score an A. So our cumulative average knowledge is a C. Well, does that mean that we're not valuable members of society, or that we're average members of society? Or
what does that tell you as an employer?
Nothing.
Right.
It's like, well, we tested you on something that you're not using in your everyday life, and then we've coupled this with the thing that you are going to use that you're really good at, and we've called you average now, even though really you're not, because this thing over here that you did bad on, one may not be that relevant to what you're actually going to be doing anyway, or right, we've coupled it with something that you're really good at, but from a practical standpoint, like in your vocabulary standpoint, if you know the vocab words, but you don't know how to use the vocabulary words, that's not great either, because now we've eluded you to thinking that you're average in English when really you're below average, because we gotta, it's great that you know the words, but if you don't know how to use the words, what good is knowing them, right? And so it also can create that illusion of, well, I did really well here, but me doing well here doesn't do any good if I'm not doing well in this area, right?
Exactly.
So I think that that's really important to get too, is it's also the implementation of, okay, you're average in this or you have an A in this, but to your point, what skills made up that? Because you can compensate then by doing really well someplace and continuing to suck in some other place. And I think that's part of what this system is talking about is, no, you can't move on from grammar until you know grammar, Well, I'm in a class, right? And I've got grammar stuck in with vocabulary, stuck in with writing, stuck in with reading, and I'm really good at reading and writing, but I'm not really good at the grammar component or the vocabulary component. So now I can skid by and never be very good at those. And then as I go, that gap is growing, right? Because I never got to where I needed to be, but I'm pushed along because my average was good enough that I can move forward.
Or my age is the right age, so I just go along, even though I didn't even learn it or show that I knew anything under the current grading system. I was just moved along because I was staying with the right age.
And they do mention the competency-based model, that the thinking here, right, is you're not going to ultimately have, an 18-year-old with like a 5 or 6-year-old. That's not generally what's going to happen. But they are going to say like 1 through 3rd graders, right? 1st through 3rd graders, they might be grouped together. So several years of ages rather than just, well, you're 6 right now, so we're going to keep you with only 6-year-olds, right? And so I think that that's important to think about too, is since people do progress at different speeds, what do you do about that?
Well, I've got something to say about that, but I think it's, we need to go to break, but I will address that because I have some really strong thoughts about that.
Age brackets. What do you do about those in this model and eliminating the traditional idea of grades? And what has COVID told us about the possibility of a competency-based model? There's lots more to come. Keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. Competency-based education. I think Lance is still in the lead here with our word of the day, which is, I guess, competent. Well, maybe neither of us are in the lead then. But competency, a form of competent, Lance has got the lead, I believe, with 4-3 right now. So keep an eye on that. But what do you think so far about this notion of competency-based education as presented? Because you do have to take a few minutes, I think, Lance, to think about it. Because I'll be honest, when I first read this, and you hear, okay, well, there's a 4-point scale, and it's like, well, so how is this really any different than grades? And then as you start to understand, well, the points are awarded based on skill sets that you understand, rather than grades based on cumulative results from different tests. So in order to move on, you have to become proficient in a skill to move on, rather than receive a cumulative average. And that, I think, is so important. We were ending the last conversation with that. But what happens when you have people who are learning at different paces in this model, and you have somebody who's in first grade who excels really fast, and I've got somebody in third grade who's not excelling really fast? How do we mix the ages?
We have to understand, and I think most of us agree, that schools are a social place. So learning social skills is important, and it's best to do that with people around your own age. You can develop that because sometimes people start school when they're 5, and some people start school when they're 6.5. So you get into 3rd or 4th grade, and you have 9-year-olds sitting in class with 11-year-olds, just based on when their birth date falls and when they started school, when their parents chose to start them in the school process. And so that already occurs. And so what you have then is you can group them together. And what we find out is that typically you don't have 20 kids in there who are all working at 20 different paces. They tend to start to group themselves within that environment. And then it's okay if you have someone who typically would be a 2nd grader who has the math capabilities of working with a 4th grader. It's not that big a deal. And then they get to science, and the 2nd graders working at grade level, and that's okay, and it's just, you work through the skill. And then what you have, here's the neat thing with a teacher. It doesn't matter what the age of the kids is at the time. They all have the same or very close level of understanding of the information. So now when I'm standing in front of the classroom, or actually in this competency-based system, you go around the room and you talk to the students as they're working in their individually or in their little groups. I'm talking to a group of students who all have the same level of understanding. So my example or examples make sense to them because I know where they are in the process. When I'm standing in front of a room of 25 or 30 students, I say one generic idea, and a third of the kids are like, yeah, well, I already got this. I'm making spitwads and getting ready to cause trouble in class because I'm bored to death because I've already got this. You've got the middle group that get the information that I'm trying to teach because they're like, oh yeah, I'm right there with you, teach, because that's where I am in my understanding. And then you have the group that's so far behind and they're sleeping in the back of the room because they're like, yeah, I don't understand from last week. So now you're building on that and I'm clueless. So now I'm just going to zone out and not even be a part of the social atmosphere or the academic atmosphere. So the neat thing about competency-based education is that you get the students grouped so that when you're talking to them and you're teaching them, you're dealing with a group of students who are at the same level, so they pick up on it. And you know very quickly when you're talking to them, oh, they need more help, or, oh, they're way ahead. And so you move on. It's just fantastic. And it so fits into education, and where we could actually be successful with every level of student on where they are with that piece of information or with that skill that we have decided is important for them to know.
The biggest obstacle on the money front is the time that's required to convert the competency-based credits to traditional seat time requirements. So it's not a teacher and student issue. Because of the way the system is built in so many places, the district has to spend a lot of time figuring out what's our conversion going to be, because the way the system's designed is that we don't recognize this option as a legitimate option. And I think it speaks to this other notion that we've talked about in the workplace, right? Which is your butt in the seat at the office is mattering less for industries where we're focused on what are you producing, right? What are you getting done for us, because there's a lot of businesses that have decided, well, that's really what we care about, right? What we really care about is the job getting done, not necessarily did I show up for 8 hours, because part of it is what we found out. And I've thought this is really interesting, having a couple of new employees myself and just observing as there's been some more flexibility in how we're getting stuff done. There's not a lot of people that like to do the same thing for the whole day, right? That's very difficult. And what we've done in the traditional model, the office model, which was built around the factory model of you're going to show up and you're going to be here from this time to this time and we're going to get a ton of work done and then you're going to go home and it'll be fine, right? Well, what I've observed is, and I haven't found anybody yet that this isn't true for, but I'm sure if you're out there, let us know. People are at their desk, right? And they're doing their computer work. And they can do that for maybe an hour or two, right? And then they start to get antsy and distracted and bored, right? And they want to do something else. They want to get up and do something, right? And so if they're given that flexibility of, well, I'm gonna really get some stuff done. Okay, but now I'm gonna go do something that's relevant to my work, but it's different. It's away from what I was just doing, and it's structurally different. They get more done in the day because they were afforded that flexibility than saying, oh no, you got to sit right here and do this thing this way the whole day, right?
And we do it in schools. It's called recess. But, you get 15 minutes of activity that you get up and you move around. We've even seen it in business models where they tell the bosses, this is what you need to do. Let your people stand up. Let them walk around. Let them mill around. Let them do something else and then come back to it. And production goes up. And so many owners are like, well, yeah, but they're not working and I'm paying them for not working. And I'm losing money there. No, you're not, because if you let them get up and they do 15 minutes of yoga, or they do jumping jacks, or they walk to the break room and they get a cup of coffee and they chat with a couple of workmates and they grab a cookie or they grab a healthy, half a banana or whatever. And then they go back, like you said, they're going to get that report done in half the time, which means now they're going to work on another report and get started. Whereas if you had forced them to stay in their seat, they would still be working on that said report in the middle of the afternoon instead of working on their second or third report. We know that because we give kids recess. We know that if we make them sit in class for 4 straight hours, they zone out and they don't learn as well. But hey, wait a minute. We also let them get up and move between classes, as we get into higher education when we take away recess. Why? Because that social interaction and the movement, the kinetic movement of the body causes the synapses in the brain to function and fire better.
And therefore retain information better. And not just retain, but process information, right? Again,
they think better.
We use those interchangeably, but processing and retention are not necessarily the same thing, right? You can retain it, i.e. you can remember it, but the processing of it and figuring out how it fits into your life, I think one could argue is even more important, because again, it's the same thing we talked about at the beginning of the show. If all you've done is remember the word, but you don't know how to use the word, who cares that you were able to remember it, right? I mean, again, what good has that done for you? And I think the point in bringing up this whole workplace environment is if part of education's job is to prepare you to be a productive member of society, why are we still preparing the majority of our students for jobs that don't operate the way the system is educating them?
Well, don't most employers want people who problem solve? And so what good does it do if you know the information, but you can't apply it to the situation that you have to solve the problem?
Well, and even in the factory model, I mean, we've talked enough to local employers, Lance, I think, to know that even the ones that are still working in that type of job setting, which is not the majority of people, but even for the ones that are, they're asking workers to be more involved because, they figured out the workers are the people doing it every day. And if we can make adjustments to how it's done that improves the worker's ability to do the job, well, that's what everybody wants, right? Because the worker's happier because they're doing it, they're not frustrated at being forced to do it in a way that isn't conducive to them getting it done. And the company's getting more done because the workers are working more efficiently. And the bottom line is that is competency-based education perfect? Probably not. But I think just from looking at it, holistically here, Lance and I have been saying for years, we got to do something, right? Things are getting worse on the whole, not better. Standardized testing is not panning out the way that everybody was saying it would be. And lots of the changes to standardized education are not panning out the way that lots of people thought they would. We got to do something. And the districts that are trying this are seeing results, right?
And this isn't throwing more money at the situation.
Exactly. And it's not just spend. And
that's a huge piece here, and you mentioned COVID, and just very quickly, COVID showed us that kids assimilate information at different rates. So it's just more proof that competency-based education might be an improvement. Like you said, there is no panacea. There is no perfect way, but we all agree that we can improve it. This seems to be an obvious, no more expensive way to go about it than what we're doing currently. So why not?
Remedial classes increase the cost of a higher education. The more of them that you have to offer, the more expensive it is. And the more time you're spending on stuff you're already supposed to know, the more money is going out of your pocket, right? Well, it's not the only thing that's costing colleges. Unvaccinated students evidently are costing colleges as well, according to a recent article from the Wall Street Journal. What do we mean? How are they costing colleges? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back. Students are suing, professors are quitting, and a few colleges are passing on extra costs of testing to those who aren't vaccinated against COVID-19. So colleges are grappling, Lance, right, with the cost of COVID-19 tests and unvaccinated students. And there's a number of universities out there that are requiring students to be vaccinated against COVID. I guess we should say too, right, because I guess it's a little misnomer, is it's not all unvaccinated students. It's most students are vaccinated because they have to be against all these things before they ever show up to college. It's being unvaccinated against COVID-19.
Yeah, they're not arguing against the other vaccines that they have to take before they can go to college, which have been there for decades. They're only arguing against this one.
So putting it in just dollar values, right? Dollars and cents. Forget about where you stand on anything other than the cold, hard reality of cash. And that is, at the University of Texas, Austin, the difference between a student vaccination rate of 60% and 80% would cost the school about $4 million to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and treat additional students who are projected to get infected, according to the school's head of COVID-19 modeling. If fewer students return to campus vaccinated, the school will spend more on tests, contact tracing, quarantine housing, and online classes. But state law prevents them from being mandated. That kind of speaks to this whole notion, right, that we've talked about with the vaccine mandate previously, and the reality that about 700 schools are now mandating vaccines for students, according to a tally by the Chronicle of Higher Education. Indiana University was among the first to require students to be vaccinated unless they're exempt for religious or medical reasons. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a request by a group of Indiana students who were seeking to block the school from enforcing the vaccine requirement, basically saying that no, in fact, vaccine requirements are constitutional. The same notion that, right, you don't have to go to school here. And also what we've talked about before, which is you have rights, but when you enter the public domain, your rights only extend so far as you not negatively taking away somebody else's right. Same thing we did with smoking, right? I mean, isn't that what happened? When you can smoke. Can you smoke in a restaurant where there's a bunch of other people who aren't smoking and give them cancer? No.
Or on an airplane or whatever.
Yeah, you can't do that, right? I mean, that's not allowed.
And we've decided as a society that we don't allow that to happen.
Right. Except in this case.
So far. Yeah. Well, and
in some cases, because there are lots of places that's not how it's working.
But you talk about money, and at Birmingham Southern College, the school president said that last year we received $1.5 million in federal money to cover the cost of testing and other expenses created by the pandemic. But he said that money's not available this year. And when, it's interesting when we see all the things in the news this week about, the budget and raising the debt ceiling and all of that stuff. I don't know about you, but it's great that these colleges got the money last year. But do you want to keep funding those colleges? I mean, when they say that they got $1.5 million from the government last year, that's our tax dollars. So do we want to keep doing that when, oh, wait a minute, he said, we don't have to do this if our students would get vaccinated.
Well, no need for testing and contact tracing if everybody's vaccinated.
And he said, with the money not available this year, he said about 70% of our students are going to return to campus already vaccinated. And he said, I don't want to force them to help pay for the cost of testing their unvaccinated classmates. To your point, if I'm doing this, and I'm following the rules and doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm saving money, so why should the college then spread the cost of the testing across people who don't need it? I mean, to me, that's logical. I don't know. It makes sense. I'm not trying to politicize it at all. I'm just, the logic here is like, I did what I'm supposed to, so therefore I should not be charged the cost of taking care of these people that didn't do things the right way.
There's an interesting idea. What if, the next round of stimulus or whatever for COVID relief, the people responsible for paying that are just the people that haven't been vaccinated? I know people out there are going to, wow, you can't.
Now they're saying we're politicizing it. But again,
but why?
We've talked about this, right? If I have a heart attack right now and I try to go to the hospital, do they have a place for me in emergency care because of all the COVID patients? So because people didn't get vaccinated, they're taking up emergency room space. They're taking up critical care units. And now I have a critical care need and I can't get it. And I'm not saying don't take care of people. And I'm not saying that people who get vaccinated, and yours truly is going to get their booster later today, that those people, we shouldn't help them. No, we should help them. But doggone it, step up and do your part, right? I mean, that's all we're saying. And if you're not, then that raises the question of, well, what responsibility do the rest of us have? Hopefully you agree that people who get COVID are stressing the medical healthcare system and costing us dollars, okay?
Not just the medical system, right? I mean, colleges, education.
Now it's education. It permeates businesses, right?
Everybody.
They can't open up the restaurant, or they can't hire workers, or not as many people are dining in. And so they're losing their business. It's affecting the economy. I mean, okay, so you have the right to do what you want to do. We're not getting into that. But can we all agree that COVID is affecting the economy? And there's maybe a way to affect the economy in a positive manner? I don't know.
Do I think that you have the right to not be vaccinated? Absolutely. Do I think that comes at a cost? Yes. In other words, you don't want to be vaccinated? That's fine. But I don't have to employ you. I don't have to be around you. You can be at your house, be on your property, be unvaccinated. I got no problem with that. Because I think you have that right? I do not think the United States government should come to your house, hold you down, and stick you with a needle, okay? Not for that. Not okay with that. Now, do I think that a employer has the right to say that in order to work here, you got to wear jeans and you're going to put on this shirt that has our name on it, and you're going to wear a mask, if you're preparing food, or you got to put on gloves if you're going to work.
And you have to show up when your shift starts.
And you have to show up on time.
And you have to stay here until your shift is over.
Yep. And here's this policy handbook that you have to do all this stuff in order to keep your job. Yeah, I think they have the right to do that, Just like you have the right to say, nah, I don't want to do that policy. You're right, but then you don't have the right to force your employer to let you work there.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, we just talked about this with the whole union thing on private business property. And it's like, yeah, you got the right to have a union, right? You have the right not to be vaccinated. You have those rights, but there's a limit to how far they extend. You can't bust down somebody else's door and say, well, you have to, no, it's my building, my business, my rules. You don't like those rules, you don't have to work here. And it's the same thing at the universities, right?
It's my school.
It's my school, my teachers, my employees, my policy. You don't like it, you don't have to go to school here.
This is the option you have here. And if you want to follow our rules, you're more than welcome to be here. And if you don't want to follow our rules, go find someplace else because there are other opportunities.
It's a whole other conversation, but especially, you talk about K through 12, okay, public school, different conversation, I suppose, even though vaccines have a long history of, being required in order to be safe. But
to be in a public school
at the higher education level, you don't have a right. Now we can discuss if you should, but right now you do not have the right to higher education, right? You don't have that right. So don't get all, I'm tired of people getting bent out of shape about this. It's like, get over yourself. I hate to break it to you, but life's made up of all kinds of stuff you got to do, you don't want to do, and if you don't like it, you don't have to do those things, right? You really don't. There are jobs you can go have where you don't have to be vaccinated. So if you don't like that your employer is requiring it, shut up and go get a different job, go to school someplace else, or don't go to school. I'm tired of it. The whining, the moaning and the complaining.
Everything has to fit the way I want it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what makes America great.
Nope. That's not. A little bit of sacrifice for literally protecting the public good, like the health of the nation and thereby the economy. You're tired of the debt, right? You're out here whining about the debt ceiling increase and how much we're spending. Well, we're spending a lot of that money because of COVID, right? And we could be done with that. We could be spending a hell of a lot less money if people would go do their part. It'd be a lot cheaper if people would just do their part.
So why are we doing this, folks? Well, because here at True Chat, we have a mission. And our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you're around the water fountain getting your 10-minute break so that you can stimulate your synapses so that you can go back and get that report done, then share this with other folks. And they say, well, where can I find it? Tell them Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
I think today the word of the day ended up pretty close. I actually don't have the definitive figure. I got caught up in the conversation. So we're going to rely on you at home. Send us an email, podcast@thestateofus.org. And while you're telling us who won, you might also tell us, what do you think about? What do you think about all this? It's okay to disagree, right? You do have, and I will say that, you absolutely have the right to disagree. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or not, because that's what it's all about here. New episodes are available Tuesdays and Thursdays, early in the morning, so you can get it right when you get up as a podcast. The State of Us is also available in select talk radio markets around the nation, so check your local AM and FM station. For the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our producer, Bradley Butch, and thank you all, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.